Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. I'm speaking to you live from the orbit in Bangsar South. And today we're here to unveil Mdec and Bank Negara Malaysia's Fintech capacity building program called the Fintech Booster. My name is Vincent. I'm the Chief Editor of Fintech News Malaysia. And joining me today to tell us more about this program is Nohizam Kadir, the Vice President of Fintech and Islamic Digital Economy for Mdec, and Suhaimi Ali, who is the Director for Financial Development and Innovation in Bank Negara Malaysia. Your title is always a bit long, and I have to try to remember and get it right.
You did well.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm sure everyone here is as curious as I am about this program. It's been in the works for some time now. So let's jump right straight into it. Gentlemen, why don't you guys tell us more about this program?
Maybe I'll share a bit of a background and how it all started.
Sure, go ahead.
Early this year, Swami's team and my team sat down together and want to understand how we would be able to provide further assistance to the fintech community, especially to those that are at ideations and early stage level. We ran a survey. It was a pretty comprehensive survey that was done by both teams, and we found out that there were three things that were in major needs of fintech companies that are at that stage, especially. First one is understanding regulatory and compliance.
That's always a challenge.
Of course, I mean this is pretty.
It's complex, right?
Complex and highly regulated, and I'm looking at Bank Negara right now, industry, right? And we require quite a bit of understanding and deep dive of whether do they really need regulatory compliance to begin with. Second one is market access, understanding, learning the ropes, as well as connecting to business opportunities, potentials for POCs and eventually deployment and partnership, right? And the third one is technology, how these companies would be able to be connected to bigger ecosystems, maybe perhaps through API integration. So taking these findings from the survey that the teams ran, we devised a capacity building platform, and that's how Fintech Booster came about. We went through several iterations on the name of the program, but we figured out, we felt that the name Fintech Booster has that essence of it, how it's boosting the growth of fintech companies.
What were some of the interesting names that didn't make the cut?
Few names actually, I know I was thinking of Pemangkin or something of that nature, right? Several names were mooted, and Booster, it went through a bit of a pivot as well, because we didn't expect for COVID-19 to happen.
Nobody did,
right? And we were supposed to start this earlier, and a lot of the initiatives were supposed to happen physical, offline, and the sessions were supposed to happen at Orbit. You know, as we're going through these whole notions of COVID-19, we figure out that it is better. And we learn as well to be online, you'll be able to reach a lot more people. There will be limitations on number of people that you can cater to be offline, face to face, right? So we pivoted, and this platform is 100% online right now.
Good. And I think it's especially true, right? Because there is about 500 people tuning in today.
Oh, okay.
There's no way that I think we can fit 500 people in this room. And a lot of people are from overseas, so it's good that we've shifted this to digital in the true spirit of digital finance, right?
Yes.
So, do you want to add more about this?
I think if I may share from the perspective of Bank Negara Malaysia and the reason why we are partnering with Mdec. If you look at our experience in terms of operationalizing Sandbox since 2016, we have had 90 innovations coming to us to be part of the Sandbox. Out of that 90, if I may share, only 27 were eligible to be considered. So 63 of those innovations were ineligible for several reasons. And if you look at the breakdown of those 63 innovations, 60% of them actually faced no regulatory impediments. So their understanding of regulatory requirements is quite lacking, and the fact that they didn't know that they didn't need to be subjected to Bank Negara regulation. The other 40% show lack of readiness, and this manifests itself in several forms in terms of having insufficient information, no proof of concept, no value proposition, some of them outside of BNM's purview. And that also basically strengthen the argument for some kind of capacity building to help them with good ideas, to be market ready, and to be able to then play with the big boys in the industry. Another observation that I may share is actually a lot of fintech companies in Malaysia that come to us operate under the pretext of low compliance costs and low operating expenses. And as you all know, when it comes to financial sector and financial system, it is actually a well-regulated industry that requires a bit of investment when it comes to compliance. So there's a need for more engagement and for better understanding, and that's the reason why we have actually partnered with Mdec to support this as well.
So of those 60-40 you mentioned, right, which category of those companies would be more suited for this program?
As I mentioned, those companies that have gone through regulatory sandbox, and some of them may not be eligible because of their non-readiness.
Right.
Those companies that are still in a bit of a limbo in understanding exactly, do I need to be regulated? What type of compliances that I need to adhere myself to? We strongly advise for them to go through this Fintech Booster initiative. And the nature of Mdec itself, I mean, we are a developmental agency. And when you are developing, you need to work with partners, right? I always like to use the analogy of Mdec being a dance floor.
Okay.
Right? Being
I'm a terrible dancer, but I'll join you.
Okay, all right. If you're a terrible dancer, that's even more, you need to be dancing with somebody else, right?
A good partner, right?
Exactly. You set that dance floor and you create the right ambience, put the right mood, whether it's romance or disco, whatever that is, right? With the right lightings and all that. And that would require partnerships with people who know the industry. And I'm very proud to say that we partner up with 6 advisory, legal and consulting firms. And I think I want to mention them, right?
Go ahead, shout out to your
Exactly. And thank you so much. And these guys are doing it pro bono, actually.
Okay.
Right? Because they realize that digital economy, especially fintech, is a new growth area, huge opportunities. And these companies, want to play a role as well in helping to grow Malaysia's fintech economy. Yeah. So PricewaterhouseCoopers, Lee Shamuddin, Allen and Gladhill, Richard V. Chambers, Zaid Ibrahim and Co., Mashraf and Tawafuk Consultancy. Right. Okay. You see a blend of legal firms, consulting firms, Islamic finance companies. Right, we see all these players would then be able to extend their wisdoms and their experience into the context of how these companies would then be able to take benefits of the opportunities, and then lending their expertise as well when it comes to the requirements from Bank Negara.
And I'm sure Bank Negara is also a key partner.
Of course.
I hope you're a good dancer, so
Well, I think my team has been heavily involved, especially in terms of curating the program. So that's where I think we lend our expertise and experience, having done a lot of capacity building ourselves in some other parts within the bank. So I think that's where we contributed the most to the program.
Excellent. So I just want to remind the audience that you guys are welcome to ask questions. So you go into Slido and key in Fintech Booster, and I'll be monitoring the questions over here to make sure that we get all the relevant questions. Shout out to our panelists over here. Okay. So you guys mentioned a lot about capacity building. Can you walk us through what you mean by capacity building in this program?
Okay. It's open to both Malaysian companies are key to us, right? Right. But we would also want to welcome foreign companies that have interest in setting up presence in Malaysia, right? Malaysia has huge opportunities. Islamic Fintech is a great, Malaysia is a great platform for them to kickstart their business with the right matured ecosystems that is in existence in Malaysia. How do they go about doing it, and the type of modules? I mentioned that we have 3 pillars. We're kickstarting with regulatory and compliance. The business model and market access will come later next year, followed by technology integration. Numerous number of partners are in discussions with us to be part of that ecosystem. It's a simple process actually, right? You visit www.fintechbooster.com.my, right? I got it right, yeah?
Even if
there's a crawler as well. Great. Okay. And you just have to go to the website and join, put in some data, right, of yourself, and you will then be able to select public sessions, organized by our esteemed partners. And these sessions would then tell you topics and modules that are related to you. Right? If you're interested in, say, Sharia compliance, for example, Mashraf and Tawafuk would be able to provide that level of support, right? And if they were to be anything with regards to legal, for example, I mean, our legal friends would then be able to provide that assistance. And that will happen twice a month, right? Subject to limit of packs per session. And having it online, it's an advantage as well, because you can expand the numbers even more. But what's more interesting as well, and Swami mentioned about regulatory sandbox, right? Swami mentioned about the right selections of companies that would then go to the next level of being intervened by Bank Negara. There will be careful selections done together with the partners, and we would then be looking at companies that we see have great potentials, opportunities for them to grow even bigger, and being able to be provided with deeper intervention, right? So there will be private sessions actually, and that will happen. There will be 12 private sessions to be conducted per month, together with those partners.
All right. So is it a one-to-one thing?
It will be one-to-one, right? That's when these companies get to deep dive. And understands further, right? We are looking at more, definitely, because I'm sure that there will be deep interest, and people are going to be asking, why are you selecting this company and not me, right? So that process will be done carefully, right? Because we want to ensure that everyone will be given that opportunity.
So there's a selection involved in this program. Is there some kind of funnel that you're working towards? What is the model here?
It is a funnel. We want to ensure that, of course, the public sessions.
So it goes in batches. Is that what happens?
It goes in batches. It goes in batches. Yeah, you're right.
Okay. All right.
I think if I may clarify.
Go ahead.
Because we rely heavily on Mdec, basically run the capacity building program, because the motivation for Bank Negara is slightly different. Because we are not in the business of nurturing startups or small businesses. We are in the business of ensuring financial stability, monetary stability, efficient payment system, and all that. So our motivation is actually to facilitate all this new innovation that is actually good for the industry, either supporting our mandates towards a more progressive and inclusive financial system that can support our economic growth. So the motivation is slightly different, and it is aligned to our mandate, and it is not doing capacity building for the sake of doing capacity building. It is actually to achieve the end game of better standards of living for the people in this country. And with this kind of innovation, basically what they bring to the table is actually either they compete and disrupt the incumbents, and on many occasions they complement and they partner with the existing incumbents to be able to offer meaningful solutions to either new markets or to the existing markets. So that's the motivation for us, and which I've mentioned many times, actually the role of regulation is to protect the system and not to protect the incumbents, and that's the motivation to support this kind of capacity building program.
Right, so the whole design of regulation, market access, and what was the third one, sorry?
technology.
Technology. So that was designed in mind with the end game of like more inclusive finance and more people being able to access various financial.
Correct.
You're right. Sorry, speaking about being inclusive, and Fintech Booster serves that purpose. There have been a lot of programs and activities organized by various ecosystem partners. And we appreciate that actually. And we really appreciate support from the private sectors, right, from the industry. We thought that by having Fintech Booster, everyone can come in under one umbrella, and makes it a lot easier as well to have a structured approach for corporations, for technology companies, for financial institutions, rather than competing, for them to be complementing and park their offerings onto a single platform. And by having Fintech Booster platform as well, not only it's going to be helping local companies to grow. Huge interest of foreign companies looking at Malaysia as a market, or maybe looking at Malaysia to set up their presence here, right? Tapping onto opportunities and talent availability in Malaysia to go through that process as well.
Would you say that this is some sort of pre-sandbox? Is that what it is?
I'm looking at it, that's why I mean right now.
Is it an accurate characterization?
I don't think it needs to be categorized that way. Because you can do capacity building, and they can, if they are not within the regulatory requirement for them to be regulated by us, then they can continue to roll out their solution. But they could be.
So there could be two routes, right? One route it ends up in the sandbox. One route ends up in your smartphone or something, I guess. Okay. Fair enough. So I think we have some questions from the audience here. So speaking about partnership with the private sector, some of the incumbents here are asking if the banks can be part of this program, how they can contribute to this program. Maybe you can
sure
a little bit on that.
All right. I think banks can come in, and they would be right partner for market access business models, as well as technology integration. We are open, again, taking into the concepts of dance floor. We want to have as many people dancing. Of course, there's some level of social distancing right now. And hopefully, with these partnerships, somebody's going to get courted and make families when they grow and scale bigger. I don't know why I thought of that. But the essence is really about being able to have more players. Government plays the role in providing that platform, more partners to come in and provide that support accordingly, and fitting themselves into the three pillars that we spoke about.
So there is a popular comment over here that maybe Suhaimi can address this, and perhaps we can also look at how Fintech Booster can help to solve this problem. So one of the members in the audience is asking whether we are setting the barrier too high for local fintech startups to experiment and innovate compared to other markets like Singapore and Indonesia. So I guess, Suhaimi, you can take this question and kind of think about how this new program helps to tackle this particular issue.
So if you're familiar with our regulatory approach, so we have one stream that talks about regulatory adaptation. And the sandbox basically serves that purpose for us to be able to experiment. And if there's a strong value prop for us to then tweak our regulation to cater for the new innovation. There are two so-called no-fly zones that we normally talk about. One is actually consumer protection, and second is actually on AMLA and terrorist financing. And if the players out there can basically come in and demonstrate alternative ways of addressing those particular risks, we are more than happy to basically talk to them. I think the challenge is for many people to be able to demonstrate strong value proposition. And how is that being very meaningful to support economic progress of the country. There are many innovations, and how then do you convince regulators? Because ultimately, we will need to invest a lot of our efforts to also tweak our regulation to cater for this new innovation. So it has to be of certain value, and that basically need to be clearly spelled out in your engagement with us.
Right. So 2 no-fly zones, and it also needs to be able to really be able to benefit the society as a
Of
whole.
course, I don't expect new fintech startups to come in and be able to undermine financial stability concern, for example, right? But that will always be so-called no-fly zone for us as well. That the mandate of the central bank is to ensure financial stability so that the intermediation function can continue uninterrupted. So good innovation by right should help to further advance the intermediation process and not undermine stability objectives.
Okay, I guess like in a sense, from the perspective of this program, because again you mentioned the capacity building, the market access and the technology. So would the capacity building really be able to help them to understand how to comply with some of Bank Negara's requirements, some of the key points, and also to be able to kind of gain the access to then raise the funding to be able to also meet some of these requirements as well. Is that part of the whole program?
It is, yes. Hence, the partnerships with the 6 partners that we have right now, we trust and we have full confidence that they have the right expertise, understanding requirements and regulatory concerns that may be faced by the fintech companies. And finding ways and helping them to legally maneuver to understand, legally maneuver to help them in advancing themselves in providing solutions to their customers.
So let's talk about who this program is for, because earlier you mentioned it's also open to non-Malaysian companies, and also for Malaysian companies naturally. So who is eligible? Do they need to have Malaysian ownership in the company? Some questions from the audience is also whether cybersecurity is part of this whole umbrella as well.
Well, with cybersecurity that cuts across fintech, I mean, of course, within fintech, cybersecurity plays a very critical role. We are open to it actually. I always look at how digital technology has evolved. Not as old, but yet matured enough for me to be reflecting back on how Mdec first started 24 years ago, right? Technology, and back then it was known as ICT, was just one of many verticals.
Mdec also was known as something else back then, wasn't it?
It was known as Multimedia Development Corporation, right?
On the old school people,
exactly, right? So it was just like any other verticals. ICT was one of the key economic pillars that the government was focusing on. But fast forward now, there are a lot of new growth areas, and digitalization happens in every single sector. You name it, there's agri-tech, there's manufacturing tech. Every single industry would have elements of digitalization. And in financial technology,
there's no exception.
It's no exceptions as well. And I'm very proud to be partnering with Bank Negara because they have been very progressive in looking into how financial technology would be able to help to advance the financial environment in Malaysia, right? And we see Fintech Booster serves that purpose, not only in consolidating partners, but also supporting that horizontal. It's no longer that vertical focus of the government, because the government realizes that digitalization is the way to go.
And nothing exists in isolation anyways.
You're right.
But I guess what you're saying is that the cybersecurity companies are part of it.
Yes.
And can I just maybe quickly follow up whether non-Malaysian companies are entitled to join? Do they need certain kind of Malaysian ownership to be part of this program, or is it open to all?
It's open to all local and foreign fintech companies that are based in Malaysia or looking to set up business in Malaysia. That's the lines given by my team actually. Right? Yes, of course. It's an open market, and I think digital empowers that. Right? We invest in platforms that may not be in Malaysia. When it comes to protections and all that, that's a separate questions, right? We connect or use digital services from companies that are not even in existence in Malaysia. I guess digital has enabled that to happen. In the context of fintech, it's similar as well. We welcome any participations from foreign companies. Of course, using this as an opportunity as well to physically welcome them to set up presence in Malaysia. A lot of the initiatives, especially with second pillars and third pillars, are going to be within the boundaries of Malaysia, right? When we get in corporates.
So they have the second and third pillar, they have to physically be.
They don't necessarily have, but in order for them to scale, in order for them to take opportunities of the offerings from their partners, right? The legal companies, the consulting companies for the first pillar right now would be giving them advisory and consultancy for what's happening in Malaysia. So
and again, it's like public sessions and then one private one
sessions, right? Okay. So we're opening it up because the ability for them to tap onto these opportunities, and then eventually looking at how would they be able to set up presence in Malaysia. Of course, we would be able to provide them with assistance, right? From even starting their companies and having their companies registered, to providing visa, and eventually getting into the ecosystems in Malaysia.
Right. So I mean, you wanted to
I
add
think just
something?
to add on in terms of your earlier question, whether some of the programs are addressing the needs with regard to the regulatory requirement at Bank Negara Malaysia. And if you look at the programs that we have lined up, and if I may mention a few, so there are programs covering eKYC and cybersecurity, programs on consumer protection, regulatory hurdles, access to funding, payment system and electronic commerce, digital banking, digital remittance, lending, investment, etc. So it is actually in that space, trying to basically help fintech companies trying to understand the regulatory requirements in this country, so that they can make better informed decision in terms of their engagement with us or their engagement with their potential partners.
So it's quite a wide gamut of...
It is actually, and this is all under legal and compliance module only. So we have not touched on
the
technology
access,
and business models.
You know, for you to be, if it gets to the second pillar and our partner is offering proof of concepts, definitely you need to have some presence in Malaysia to make you a legal entity to be able to partake in the proof of concepts.
I mean, if you want to expand here, you have to be here, right?
Of course, yes.
So I guess the other question is, for those companies who are interested to be part of this program, what level of commitment is expected from them?
I think it's very minimal, and we're doing this for free, right? We see there's a need to be doing this. We see there's a need to have a structured approach in providing supports and services from our partners to the fintech companies. As I said earlier, visit www.fintechbooster.com.my, get yourself registered. You select the public sessions that are relevant to you, and going through that process as well to have you to be selected to have the private sessions.
Cool. So earlier, you mentioned a little bit about investment, and I think some of these aspects do fall under capital markets and the purview of our friends from Securities Commission in Malaysia. So is this part of the program, or?
Well, we have been in talks with SC. I have informally extended invitation for them to also join.
I think some of them are tuning in as well.
So hi Azrina. So it is actually up to them to join.
Cool, that could be like the future phases then.
It is, yeah.
Wonderful. And you're saying people can get more info at fintechbooster.com?
.com.my.
Yeah. All right, cool. So there are some questions from the audience over here. So there are some overseas regulatory compliance technology firms who's asking how they can support local fintechs in meeting BNM and international regulations.
Okay. Well, I mean,
talk to them, I guess.
So for us, we are technology neutral. We don't choose winners, and as much as we would like the market to basically find its own equilibrium and find its own partners. However, if there are concerns on certain regulatory requirements that may hinder good innovation, as I mentioned earlier, then come and approach us. Because, for example, we have tweaked our regulation to allow for the financial sector to move to cloud, which was kind of a no-fly zone until early last year. So we are approaching innovation in a very practical manner, as long as the players understand the kind of risk that they're getting themselves into, and there are mitigating measures that can be put in place to effectively mitigate those risks that we are concerned about, then we are willing to listen. But as I said, as much as possible, we would like the market to find their own right level of partnership, right level of innovation, without us having to play God or or be there all the time to handhold.
You don't want to be stifling innovations as well.
Correct. So I think a lot of our intervention is actually trying to create an enabling environment on both the demand and supply side, so that the innovation can flourish. But we generally don't get into choosing specific technology or choosing specific winners. We let the industry decide on that.
So I have two questions, and I think this would be quite beneficial for those overseas audience who are tuning in to try learn about this market in Malaysia. So Suhaimi, one question is for Suhaimi and one question is for Hizam. So Suhaimi, earlier you mentioned that there are certain priorities for Bank Negara when it comes to innovation, certain problems in society that we're trying to address and solve. So maybe if you can walk us through what those are, and then after that Hizam can walk us through why foreign companies should even consider Malaysia, what specific opportunities are there, those sort of things. So why don't we start with Suhaimi?
Maybe I'll talk about some of the challenges that remain, at least within our fintech ecosystem and within the financial sector. And we can then elaborate from there, right? One is actually the issue of talent shortage. So that remains an issue within the ecosystem to find the right people to be able to do the kind of things that we want to do. Second is actually what we have been discussing is actually the ability to understand and conform to existing regulations. Third is actually access to funding, especially for the later stage funding. So that remains an issue from the supply side for all these people with good ideas and good POCs to be able to scale up. Fourth area would be actually on implementation of digital infra. So there are pressing needs to look at, one is actually the national digital ID, because that is an important enabler to move in this space. Second is actually with regard to the framework regulating data sharing. Currently we have PDPA, but PDPA governs the process of collecting data, storing, disseminating and all that. But I think the issue in Malaysia that has not been resolved is actually with regard to data ownership. Who owns the data? So in Australia they have legislated to say that customer owns the data and they can decide for the data to be shared with forever for their own benefit. So that kind of issues will need to be looked at in order for us to have a more robust innovation within the financial sector. Without ability to leverage on big data, without the ability to leverage on data sharing, then the benefit is kind of limited. So how best to move forward to achieve that? However, there are a lot of actually preconditions that need to be put in place. Are we ready for that? So I know that even I think yesterday there was an invitation from Mdec for this kind of meeting on data sharing regime. So it is actually moving in that direction. And the national digital ID is also in the pipeline. And it is actually on a very accelerated timeline. So hopefully we will have some kind of at least certainty with regard to our direction moving forward by this year, with regard to national digital ID. But for the financial sector, given that enabling infra is not in place, what we have done is actually introduce the eKYC policy. So to enable at least our own regulators to embark on eKYC. And secondly, we have introduced voluntary open API regime, whereby then those who partner with fintech companies or within the ecosystem partner among themselves can have a standard for them to share data, to provide better solutions to consumers. And the last challenge that I would like to mention, and this is actually true to us, is actually how do I strike the right balance between financial stability and facilitating innovation. For example, if we were to look at the case for digital bank, so there's a strong value proposition for digital bank to come in and help enhance competition, help with to reach out and provide access to unserved and underserved. However, let's say if the big techs were to come in first and they have the ability to scale up rapidly, would that then pose financial stability risk? Because they would be able to then disrupt the market fairly quickly. So then how do you manage that transition? So these are the considerations that we have at our end in terms of how do I strike the right balance to allow innovation, to allow disruptive innovation to come in, at the same time preserving the stability of the system to ensure that over the long period of time the country can continue to prosper. So that has always been a dilemma for regulator like us.
I think a term that's constantly cropped up recently in light of certain banks, digital banks from certain region who gave up very interesting high interest rates. It's to not engage in value destructive behavior. Is that what you're looking at the moment?
Correct. Well, basically we want them to be able to, at least during the initial phase of digital banking framework that we have announced, is actually for them to be able to come in and serve the unserved and underserved market and provide quality products, which the conventional or the incumbent banks are not able to do because of either the legacy problems that they have, or they have yet to move into so-called algorithm type decision making, etc. So we want a strong value prop that can actually help us achieve that inclusivity agenda or objective at this point in time. But in the long run, I would see then, it would be a more level playing field, whether you are, a digital bank or you are just an incumbent players in the market.
So before we jump into Hizam's question, which this is also related to opportunity as well, right? So you said underserved and markets that the incumbents aren't necessarily focused on. What are those markets specifically?
So in terms of how we have designed our digital banking framework, it is for the applicants to showcase to us the understanding of what it means. So simply speaking, it could be consumers that currently do not have access to finance or financial services. Or it can be people like you and me, whereby we do not get certain quality products, even though we are well banked, but there could be certain areas where
the investment thing.
For example, micro investment in Malaysia is quite lacking. Investment in Malaysia is seen as a product for the rich. So people with limited savings or limited cash flows currently have limited options for investment. So potentially there could be that area that we can actually help, or we can further advance in this country to further advance micro investment.
Okay, very cool. Thank you for that. And Hizam, what are the opportunities in Malaysia?
I'm going to start by, again, giving another analogy.
You love your analogy.
Yes. Sometimes I get told off because of the reference I made for Malaysia being stuck or suffered from middle child syndrome. Right? I think I have had a discussion with you before. We're not sophisticated enough, or our per capita income does not reach what Singapore is experiencing right now. And at the same time, we don't have the sheer market size that Indonesia has. So sometimes foreign companies that come to Malaysia start looking at us and say that, what exactly are your values? Right? I know this is a bit of a corny analogy, and when you eat your sandwich, it's always the best what's in the middle, right? But on a serious note, we've done this and we've been spearheading digital economy or technology as an economy for the last 24 years. Mdec has facilitated more than 4,000 companies that have received MSC intervention. And it has created more than 160,000 high-skilled job opportunities in Malaysia. That helps a lot. It helps me as well because I started off in technology companies before joining Mdec. Government support is crucial, especially in new growth areas, right? And we play the role to catalyze, but at the end of the day, private sector needs to be partnering up and dance together with us. You're right. From the existence of Fintech Booster exactly serves that purpose, right? Apart from Fintech Booster, many would have heard about the MSC incentives that provide technology companies, foreign and local, with corporate tax exemption, with facilitations of foreign knowledge workers. We do believe we're not limiting influx of foreign workers to come into Malaysia, especially if they are high skilled. We believe that diversity breeds creativity. And even more so, about 2 years ago, we have introduced a program called Malaysia Technology Entrepreneurs Program, where we invited, we welcome foreign founders to use Malaysia as a base.
That's known as MTEP, right?
MTEP,
the one that
www.mtap.my, right, for you to be applying. From experimentation standpoint, a lot of startups tell me that they want to be in an environment where it gives them the opportunity to solve problems. You look at Malaysia, and that's the beauty of being middle child. You're neither here nor there.
It's a rare statement.
Exactly, right? You want traffic problems, traffic problems are here as well, right? You want, and so I may mention about unavailability of micro investments, right? How do we reach the makcik kios in order for makcik kios to be able to invest, or maybe getting micro capital, all right? Or protecting their SMEs, their employees. Gig economy workers are growing number-wise in Malaysia. There's huge opportunities, and I see problems like this will then be able to be solved by the fintech companies. Another opportunity is it's generally young population. Smartphone.
So people like us then?
People, of course, people like me. I'm not sure about Suhaimi though.
Younger.
Young populations are digitally natives, right? And some of them are born with smartphones, and penetrations of smartphones in Malaysia have reached 80%. A lot of education is needed. We don't want makcik kiah just to be using their smartphones for WhatsApp and WeChat to be in touch with their families. Or surprising enough, as we go turun Padang, right, we find out that some of these makcik kiah are using their smartphones for TikTok. Right? But how would we be able to continuously educating them, telling them that there are opportunities that could improve their livelihood? And that's very much aligned to the mandates of Bank Negara as well. How would we be able to provide them with access to micro capital? How would we be able to provide them access to insuring themselves, right? As they pivot and they...
And under insurance is a issue to be solved, right?
It is huge. I mean, when there's problems, there's opportunities, right? And how would we be able to assist, general Malaysians to be able to financially sustaining themselves in the future. While huge populations in Malaysia, 95% of Malaysians are banked, right? When we look at the number, it looks like, Malaysia is a developed market. But you peel the numbers, there's still a huge community that are underserved. These are the communities that would then be able to take benefits of this financial inclusion offerings from fintech companies, and partly because they are talking to the young population, they are talking to the digitally natives who are familiar using smartphones, and technology would then be able to reach people who basically have smartphones in their hands, right? What we are doing right now is to continuously increase understanding, right? Understandings of how to use your smartphones to be able to tap onto the offerings that are provided by fintech companies. We do have a program. It's still at preliminary level right now, but we're working with 12 fintech companies under a flagship called eBerkat.
Right, I've seen that.
Yeah,
For the benefit of the audience, you might want to.
It is. So eBerkat is an industry-led platform, right? Consists of fintech companies that are offering micro capital, micro insurance, and micro investment.
Right.
Because we realize that the underserved community would then be able to take advantage.
Sure.
Partly because smartphone ownerships has gone higher. People are holding that smartphones, but we want them to be holding that smartphones to be able to help to improve their livelihood, not just playing TikTok for that matter.
So some key themes just to quickly sum it up before we move to Suhaimi. So what I'm sensing you're saying is that because we're kind of like a Goldilocks situation where our infrastructure is ready enough for you to build upon, and we have a ready population to kind of adopt some of the solutions, but yet there's enough issues that we're facing that there's space for the market to actually solve this problem compared to maybe some more matured markets where it's very competitive, it's very difficult to find a gap to go into, or some less mature market where the time for you to scale and build up the foundational level is a challenge. Is my understanding of your statement correct? Is that correct?
Okay, that question is for me. Yes, yes.
Okay, let me correct. Yes or no? Yeah.
It is.
Okay.
Every problems, and I always look at things half glass full, right? There's always silver lining to any problems. I mean, if you look at what's happening in the last 3-4 months, COVID-19, who would have thought that every single corner of retail outlets that use it would have QR code. I remember having discussions with Suhaimi about implementations of QR code several years back, and it was a bit. There was a bit of hesitation from the SMEs in particular. If they were to be an award to crown CIO of the year, I probably would give it to the COVID-19.
Yeah. I think if I may bring the discussion back to the current context of dealing with the pandemic that we have right now, and I'll share some observation that we are seeing from our lens, and I'll allow you to make your own conclusion in terms of where you fit within this new environment. Of course, today, the fact that we are speaking to 500 people from this kind of setting shows that we are operating under a new normal, right? And from what we have seen in the past few months is actually the fact that digitalization adoption has accelerated. One is actually there's explosion in e-commerce transactions. I'll talk a bit more during my second session later. Attitude shift towards e-wallet and digital payments. Flexible underwriting for insurance has also emerged. And if you look at the impact of the current pandemic to companies, of course, that differs and varied across businesses, sectors, and depending on specific circumstances of the company. But what we notice is actually, and this is common sense, that companies with established presence and financial buffers tend to be able to survive naturally, right? But what is important for you to understand is actually the economic recovery itself will be uneven across sectors. So sectors that are in high touch or high touch sectors like services and all that tend to lag in terms of the recovery the most, and that is naturally so because of social distancing. They are not able to operate at optimal level and all that. So we are seeing even as our economy has resumed operations, and we are seeing manufacturing and all that pick up quite fast as compared to services sector. So you may want to draw your own conclusion in terms of where you are and how you're going to manage this, right? And other changes that are happening beyond the long-term mega trend that we have been seeing, one is actually the global value chain configuration. The fact that now people are moving away from China because they need to have their BCP, and countries like Vietnam and Indonesia have actually been benefiting quite a lot from this move to diversify away from China. And there's also a lot of structural issues that we have prior to COVID. For example, the fact that we are a highly indebted country, and we have property overhang, for example. So those also play an important role in terms of how fast can the whole economy recover. So while those are all the set observation, of course there are opportunities. The fact that fintech itself stands to gain from all this. The fact that fintech companies are set up based on the fact that you guys are fast and agile, by right, you guys should be able to then take advantage of the whole situation. And how then you can also leverage on data-driven model. The fact that within the ecosystem, there are a lot of fintech companies that you can partner with and can leverage on each other to offer products that are suitable within the context of the current environment, for example. The social distancing requirement and the fact that people are now a bit more cautious for physical interaction also allows opportunities for digital transactions to happen online. So how do you then make use of this situation to your own benefit? And also, as I said earlier, more demands for business to go digital. So these are the observation that we are seeing right now. I'll talk a bit more during the second session. But, you know, again, from any crisis, there will always be opportunity. It's how you understand the context within the environment that you're operating in and how do you basically benefit from it.
And I think that's true because like a lot of my colleagues from Singapore, Hong Kong and other regions are observing similar things, that digital transactions are all around going up, and that's a natural thing. Sorry,
I was just going to add to what Suhaimi said with regards to change in behavior, especially with these high-touch services companies. They don't have a choice, honestly. And if I can relate to what we've been doing for the past 2-3 years through our e-usahawan programs, right, where we get SMEs, in particular micro SMEs, teaching them, giving them educations on how to digitalize their businesses. They were, of course, initial hesitation. Why would I need to pivot when things are not broken? Why do I need to fix when things are not broken? But now things are broken, right? And if it's not fixed digitally, they will no longer be relevant in their business.
It's a race to survival.
Exactly. And government realizes that. We have drum up our efforts, especially for our engagement with micro SMEs. And through Penjana as well, several initiatives have been launched. We are currently in rigorous speed, and we have to speed up as well. And we have to accelerate our process as well in allowing more and more micro SMEs to be onboarded onto e-commerce platform, and that definitely benefits a lot of fintech companies, right? There are grants given, there are supports given. Of course, we also encourage for people to shop Malaysian products, right? And doing it online. There are supports, matching grants given to fintech companies, technology companies, because you need these technology companies to help the micro SMEs to digitalize themselves, right? There's a grant called SME Business Digitalization Grant that provides matching grants for SMEs and micro SMEs to get onto the platforms that are digital. And in the long run, when we start kicking off e-usahawan, it started off with basic fundamentals of how would these micro SMEs being able to create visibility and presence on social media, right? And by getting them, giving them that flavor, and then they start thinking, wow, makcik selling jamu in Terengganu have gotten some interest from Thailand, right? I'm just making things up right now, right? But they wouldn't have gotten that exposure. They wouldn't have gotten that market if they would have not gotten onto a digital platform. But what's more interesting is how do we take them to the next stage? How do we connect them, engage them with mobile payment gateway? How do we structure them with proper POS solutions? How do we get them onto onboarding to a bigger e-marketplace, for example? And these are opportunities in the context of SMEs in Malaysia increasing that contributions of SMEs to Malaysia's economy. Right?
Wonderful.
Government wants to position SMEs in a bigger context, and having SMEs to contribute to at least 50% to Malaysia's economy. We're currently at about 38%, right? And digital would be able to fast forward that.
Wonderful. So
I think if I may talk about
go ahead.
at least
we are running short on time.
Oh, okay.
yes, very short.
Condense. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So at a macro level, basically, what we're trying to do to deal with the current crisis is actually we provided reliefs, temporary reliefs, as well as support for businesses to pivot to new normal, right? So then, what Bank Negara has done is actually, the temporary reliefs in the form of moratorium, deferment of premium, etc. But when you look at the funds that were provided to SMEs, and a lot of them are actually for you or for the businesses to pivot to new normal. There's automation and digitalization funds. There are also funds to basically for the tourism sector that is actually badly affected, for them to then be able to pivot to the new environment. So we need to change in order for us to survive. And so that's actually a key message for everyone.
Wonderful. Now, we have a couple of minutes left. I think the thing about this kind of conversations is that we often can go on for hours and hours and not realize it. But okay, let's take one last question, and then maybe Izam, do you want to show how the application works?
Sure.
So, but let's finish one last question, then we'll go ahead.
Okay.
So, and I think this is pertaining to the second phase of the Fintech Booster, which is more focused on the market access part. So, some of the audience is asking about funding issues, because I think a lot of fintechs in Malaysia kind of struggle to go beyond Series B. So, in a way, like, how does this program help to kind of address this issue? And maybe just a quick 1 minute answer for that.
Okay. Funding is an issue, right? Risk capital in advancing growth of startups in particular. Government realized that the engine of growth in the future comes from innovative companies. There have been a lot of attempts. There have been a lot of supports given by the government through various government agencies. I mean, our good friends in Cradle, in MTDC, in Magic have done wonderful jobs in pushing that agenda. But you're right, and Swami did mention as these companies scale up, getting into Series B and above, where are the intervention, right? Won't be able to disclose much, but many would probably have heard of Penjana Capital. There's Dana Penjana that have been announced by the government in looking into matching fund with VCs. They have been welcoming and in the selection process right now, partnering up with foreign VCs through fund-on-fund strategy.
So that's separate from the booster, but there are initiatives.
Yes, there are other initiatives, and because of the fact that funding is really critical, that focus spearheaded by MOF in looking into how fund-on-fund, the strategies of partnering with foreign VCs and even private equity firms is a main priority for them. The way I look at it, yes, that fund is important. Money is critical. But by having participations from foreign VCs, local VCs are important as well, because you need to ensure that the ecosystems, the local VC ecosystems is well nourished and well cultivated as well. It is more of the ability to be connected to the whole entire global ecosystem, right? No one works alone. And in the area of digital, it is not just about Malaysia. Startups that have come to me and say, I'm looking at a particular project with a particular government agency, right? My next questions would be, how would you be able to scale yourself after this project has completed? If you were to have a mentality to just be looking at Malaysia in mind, I think you probably may not want to be in digital economy, because digital economy, at least you have to start looking at ASEAN as the end game, if not global, for you to dominate.
It's medium to long term.
It is, right? And it allows you to do that. The ability for you to tap onto digital beyond boundaries.
From the policy perspective, as a country, we are too heavily dependent on banking sector financing, and that is not sustainable, given our leverage ratio is very high in this country. So what Bank Negara and SC is currently working on is actually how do we then develop the ecosystem for alternative financing. So the work is actually in progress. This has been a topic of many years, and we have not been able to successfully develop viable alternative sources of funding that can take away some of the pressures on the banking sector. As you can see from the current crisis, everybody is very much heavily dependent on the move of the banking sector, given our heavy reliance on them. So there is that work that is currently being done to see whether, as a country, we can have a more credible framework for alternative sources of funding.
Your colleagues from SC would say that, there's a framework and working towards it.
So we are working closely with them, actually.
Well, I think we should give credits to SC. And hi, Vimin, hi, Azrina. Hi, Zong.
I'm not sure.
You know, with the advancements of P2P and ECF, Malaysia was at the forefront when it first initiated. I think it was 4 years ago.
And we're recognized by multiple reputable studies as well.
It is. And I don't have the numbers handy in my head right now. A number of fintech companies themselves have benefited from this alternative financing.
6,000 fundraising, I think about 600 plus million.
But the information is publicly available on the site.
It is.
You have it in your report as well, Vincent.
We do have it in the report as well. So I'm afraid we've run out of time. Maybe, Hizam, do you want to quickly show them how to...
Sure.
Can we have the site up on the screen?
All right, so this is how the website looks like. You visit www.fintechbooster.com.my. Okay, you guys are really testing my eyesight right now. Okay, if you can scroll down just to give the audience a bit of an overview how it looks like. We mentioned about the three pillars earlier. That's our partners. We're going to be continuously populating with new partners as it comes along. And go down, right? And this is, go up a bit. All right, and that's the upcoming programs that are being offered by our partners. We've got 3 right now, and I'm sure that there will be more coming soon. What you need to do is, as I said, sign up, put in your details, and then click on these public programs, and it will then lead you to the dashboard. Yeah? Okay, that's the sign up page. All right, and then we'll ask you as well on your topic of interest. Okay, and it takes you to this beautiful dashboard that has the program listings as well as the programs that you have selected for you to enroll, and it will send you reminders and notifications accordingly.
Okay, great. Thank you for that roundup. Gentlemen, only leaves me to thank you guys for joining us and explaining about this program.
Thank you.
Please stay tuned. We do have another session coming up by Suhaimi where he'll really walk us through some of the regulatory stuff.
Right.
We will be returning in 15 minutes so that our guests can take a little break, get some water, and rearrange the stage. So come back at 11:15. We will see you guys shortly. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. Thank you, Rizal.
Thank you, Saimi.